Hi, my name is Hannah, and today we're interviewing Rohit. Originally from New Zealand, he is now based in Singapore. Rohit is the CEO of the Singapore branch of Swiss-based independent asset management company. Specific fields: multifamily office, wealth management, private banking, investment management, asset management, new business development, and new markets M&A alternative investment. Today he gives us his view on key trends that require our attention as we emerge into a post-pandemic world.
This podcast channel is about you, successful international entrepreneurs, successful expats, successful investors. Sponsored by HCJ.tax.
Good evening, Rohit. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for your time. Could you please introduce yourself to those who may be watching you or listening right now?
Yep. Thank you very much, Derren. Rohit Bhuta. I am the CEO of a private wealth management multifamily office called Cross Invest Asia. We are based in Singapore. I've been at the helm at Cross Invest for 5 years now. Lived in Singapore close to 10 years. Prior to that, 7 other countries. So pretty much Australia's home, but I've been in Singapore, as I said, for 10 years now, right?
Okay, gotcha. Great. So, I mean, I've been a fan of your weekly reports for a while now. I get them.
Yep.
And I see you've started doing audio clips as well, in addition to the written reports. So I guess your interest is from an economic perspective, but I'm not limiting you to that. I mean, you can talk about it from any way which you want to. So unprecedented, we've never been here before. What do you think is going to happen in the future? Are we going to return to normal, or is this the new normal?
Well, interesting you say, what do you think is going to happen, right? There's so many pundits out there, going on about and writing about, all the things that could potentially happen, may happen, doom and gloom on the one side and markets sort of going sort of gangbusters on the other side. I honestly think, and I'm in charge of looking after other people's money. I honestly think no one knows. I really think no one exactly knows where we headed. The problem at the moment is a lot of people are stepping back and thinking, we should say something. We should say something, and we should actually go forecast. If this happens, then this might end up happening. If that happens, and that, and you're hedging, right? The way I see it is it's unprecedented, as you say. It's not something that I hope we'll ever see again in our lifetime. But it is, we've been in isolation in Singapore for almost 10 weeks now. I've been working from home 10 weeks now, and we, it's sort of we're moving to phase 2 from tomorrow. But I was just saying before that actually I got used to the isolation. I really did get used to working in this environment, right, with the 4 walls. What will happen? No one knows. Mm-hmm. But what we should, as professionals in the private wealth space, what we should be doing is actually managing our clients' money in such a way that we are ready for any eventuality that happens. Not taking any risks. It could. A good example is the number of employment numbers in the US. Everyone expecting a further number, unemployed number, to be 7.5 million last month. It actually gained 2 million. That's a big disparity. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, it's step back. Don't be too smart. See what happens, right?
Okay. Yeah, the unemployment numbers, and then I've seen other people comment on the numbers, and that when you take a deeper dive into it, it's a lot of part-time employment, so it's underemployment and stuff like that. So we
Oh, look,
just
I
we don't
think it
know.
was bound to happen. It was bound to happen.
Yeah.
As soon as the economy opened, or as soon as the markets opened, as soon as the businesses opened, they had to get people back in, right? So I just think, a lot of experts thought it may not happen as quickly as it did. But then people losing their jobs happened so quickly as well, right? So the rapid fire was supported by the rapid rehiring again. But back to your first question, unprecedented, where do we head from here? Look, I think the one thing that has happened is the circumstances under which we operate and work, has forced people to be resilient, has forced people to be innovative as we move along, and has forced people to step back and actually just reflect, right? So I certainly have reflected on a number of things as well. The markets do what they do. 2008 happened, 1997 happened, all these things will continue happening. It's how we react to it and how we ensure that we're ready for something like that happens again, and we learn from the mistakes we make, and we will make mistakes.
Okay, so let's take a deeper dive into that part then, about how we as professionals manage it, and the point that you made that it's been 10 weeks that you've been working remotely, working from home. I'm thinking that, okay, you can work remotely, but if, the signals that we're getting from the decision makers, let's say in Singapore, is that this will be the new norm. They want the default to be work remotely. Unless you absolutely have to, let's work remotely. So then you can take that to one step further. Then, well, okay, do I need an expensive office in the CBD? And then you may think, well, do I need to be in Singapore? Because I was talking to some other people earlier this week. We've come from different countries: Australia, the US, UK, Europe, whatever. And we came to Singapore, and we have accommodation that's a lot smaller than what we had previously. But we did that because, the condos have amenities. We have country clubs or membership clubs to go to. And so you basically sleep in your condo. So it's okay that it's relatively small. But now, if this is the new norm, then, the walls are really closing in on you. And I don't need to be in Singapore. So maybe I can return to Australia, Europe, US, and work remotely, fly in once in a while as needs be. But do you see the shape of Singapore changing if this were to continue?
That's a great question, and I think it's a broader question. It's not only the shape of Singapore. I think it's potentially shape of any country right now. Is the dynamics, as you say, correctly point out, the dynamics are changing. And, one thing I'd like to step back. So if you think about it, technology has always been there. The ability to work from home has always been there. The ability to do video conferencing like the way we're doing right now has been there. It's not something that actually people had to go out very quickly and start building because we were forced to work from home, right? So we were just not ready for that change. Every time before this happened, a lot of people were saying, okay, well, the dynamics of work environment will change, but we were not forced to do it. So we just sort of thought it was far-fetched, too far-fetched. I still would like to travel somewhere and meet a client, right? So now that we've been forced into this, the first week, first 2 weeks, first month perhaps would have been tricky as we started sort of getting used to the environment, as we started getting used to sort of working from home in isolation, and communicating with people through phones and conferences and what have you. Now, because we've been forced to do this, I think it's become a norm. It is not something, and most importantly, we are resilient. we've now accepted that whether this has happened through disaster recovery or it's happened because we were sort of in this environment and we improvised. We can do this, right? To your point. So, do we need an office environment? Is the first and foremost question. I guess if you step back and if you think about the type of business that you have, and the type of business and the culture that you want to foster within the organization, how important is the team camaraderie? How important is for the team to be together? And I've thought about this, and then the question is, can you achieve the same thing by staying home? We have twice a week catch up, with the entire team. We talk to each other on a regular basis. We have regular meetings through either GoToMeeting or Zoom. And as inefficient as it can be every now and then, it works. So how will it change in the future? My apologies. How will it change? How will it change in the future? Big teams who require camaraderie, who require to be sort of together. If that is their proposition, they might want to be in an office. But broadly, I think the need for bricks and mortar might change. And the expensive offices, for example, the extent of massive, significant, substantial fit outs, for example, that might change. Clients might decide, hang on, I don't need to actually go into someone's office and meet with them, right? When I can achieve the same thing here, like this, right? So it will be driven, I think, through a push and a pull factor. Clients might decide, don't really need. Companies might decide, hang on, little groups of people can work together, but we don't need to necessarily be all together in one large, big office. And, you could co-locate in smaller spaces somewhere else, right? Dynamics, the seeds are sown, so I think the change will happen. How quickly it happens now, I think anyone's guess, really. To a certain extent, I was saying before, when Singapore announced that we will start relaxing from tomorrow onwards, although default position is continue working from home, I did feel a pang of sadness. I was thinking, hang on, do I start this rat race again, right? Do I don this jacket and tie again and stuff, right? So, look, I think, and I'm not the only one. I think there'll be loads of people out there who probably are feeling something similar. So you don't have to be in Singapore anymore. You could be anywhere. You could be in Bali in a beach club right now and having a similar conversation and achieving the same thing that you could achieve from Singapore. So I think the dynamics of city living, dynamics of moving from country to country, and dynamics of the requirement to be physically present somewhere, that definitely is going to change.
Indeed. And in New York, I've seen people commenting on it in various online forums. So when the pandemic really got concentrated in New York City, many of those who could have afforded it, they left Manhattan and they went to their homes elsewhere where they have more space and they can be isolated or whatever. And now with the protests going on, there's little incentive to come back. And, so it's not just Singapore, but just, this is a conversation that's happening in financial centers elsewhere as well. But my thinking is, okay, we can work remotely, but then there was something magical about being close to each other. So you bump in, you in Starbucks, you may bump into someone else who does something that can work synergistically with you. You can, a conversation may lead to a deal, may lead to an opportunity. And those random encounters, when there's a webinar on Zoom, I can't exchange business cards with the guy next to me who came from another company. So, have you given any thought to how that will work? We can maintain existing relationships online, but finding new ones. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not either or.
Okay.
And you've nailed it. I think it's not either or. I think there will still be a need to actually have the physical contact. but is there a need to actually do it every day?
Yeah.
Is there a need to be in the office, every day, day in, day out, 5 days a week, 9 to 5 or 9 to 7, whatever the timing is, right? I don't think so anymore. Is there a need to have a 5-day working week? I don't think so anymore, right? I think the specifics of that is going to change. The weekend, the last 10 weeks in isolation in circuit breaker in Singapore, every day just merges into another. Each day is the same as the previous day. Come Saturday or Sunday, it just feels exactly the same. The weekends, they don't feel any different anymore. So I think from that perspective, it's not either or. So right now we're doing this because we're forced to do it. When we get to a more sort of freedom within boundaries environment, people will decide to actually, some days they might decide, okay, well, I can work from home. And companies will allow that, I think. And also there are some days when you do want to go out to that conference, or you do want to go out for a beer in the afternoon. That networking is still a requirement. I think it's a basic human need, right?
Yeah.
Basic human need to actually shake hands and go, good day, how are you going? And having a beer. Or whatever your poison is, right? That will not change. Like in Singapore, from tomorrow, restaurants are going to open. And even though you're allowed, groups of 5, most of the restaurants are getting booked out because people have been locked up. They have this innate desire to actually go out. And so I think that will not change. That will continue.
Right. So I guess there's a lot of speculation, and it's driven by how quickly we return to what once was. Because I was reading someone on my LinkedIn feed, he was commenting on what's going on with Airbnb right now. They're sending home a lot of employees. They're not going to IPO anymore because their business model has been fundamentally challenged by what's going on right now. And I'm thinking of, like the convention center, Marina Bay Sands, and facilities, people who played in that space. What happens to them if it is that we don't return to the point where we can have like a big convention, there are 100 people in there talking about family offices, whatever. And I guess the answer to that would be, as you said, 5 at a time, 10 at a time, smaller rooms, smaller interactions. And it is what it is. Now, Asia in particular, before this pandemic, to some extent, there was a slowdown. There was a slowdown pre-pandemic as the growth in China was slowing down. One would expect with greater economic nationalism, trade wars continuing, that slowdown may continue. Do you see any implications to Southeast Asia as a result of that, or the rest of Asia? If so, what?
In terms of?
Economic slowdown.
Look, I think, the slowdown, to your point, had sort of started even before COVID, anyway, for various reasons. And this will continue. Singapore is a classic case in point. First time ever, it will have quite a substantial negative GDP. They're thinking anywhere from 5 to 9%.
Yeah.
And Singapore has not seen anything like this before, ever. And again, it goes back to, if you have experienced downturns, you know exactly how to, or you've made mistakes and you know what mistakes not to make. The next downturn happens, you make new mistakes, and then you know which mistakes not to make again, and so it goes, right? But when you haven't been through a downturn such as this, it can be challenging. Hong Kong is another good example where the protests last year, effectively had the impact of slowing the economy down, had the impact of companies and expats looking to move from Hong Kong to places like Singapore. And now with the new security law that China is sort of bringing in, that is perhaps just going to accelerate a move away from Hong Kong that will perhaps accelerate international companies trying to sort of relocate to other jurisdictions. Could be Singapore. They might decide. Asia right now has got way too many challenges, and might just decide, well, let's just go back to our home base, right, for a short while. So I think generally Asia, we are going to face a bit of a downturn. It is challenging times right now. Most of the wealth in Asia was created through property. And we talked about the norm. What is a norm going to be? Are we going to keep working from home, and what will be the value of bricks and mortar? The value of properties will be impacted as a result, right? And I'm not forecasting whether it's coming down or up, whatever, but I do think it will be impacted. Yeah. And that will have a direct result, impact rather, on people that own properties, landlords, for example. Expats in Singapore, there was a report that close to 200,000 people will potentially lose their jobs as a direct result of COVID. And also they're saying about 60% of that potentially will be expats. So, if you have a situation where close to 140,000 people, expats, will be losing their jobs, that's potentially 150 households, right? Multiply that by 4, assuming married with 2 kids, there's a lot of people that actually leave in the country. And then the indirect impact on schools, international schools. The country clubs, which you referred to before, and the food and beverage industry, and so and Hong Kong is similar, albeit there are other drivers where expats are sort of leaving as well. So I do see certain challenges at the moment. But the way I see it is, one expat family leaves, and in 6 months' time, there's a vacuum created, and there's another family that will come back in. Right? So it's not the end of the world. It's not doom and gloom. But I think there is going to be a recycling rather of people right now. I've sat here, I've looked at, all the fiscal stimulus packages that's been sort of distributed by the various governments. I see what Australia's doing, I see what New Zealand's doing, I see what Singapore's doing. I don't get to see a single cent of that, right? Because I'm an expat. I live in Singapore, and Singapore will not obviously look after me, and which is fine. And New Zealand will not look after me because I'm not working there. I'm not paying tax there either, right? So I think it will also drive certain behavior as well as a result of this. Certain expats might decide, if I can work from home, do I need to be in Singapore? Can I work from back home again? You are in Miami right now, yeah, and then you're working from there as well, right? So I think dynamics are going to change. There are challenges in Asia. It's not something that we will recover from very, immediately. It is a long haul. How long it is, I go back to what I said right at the outset. We don't know. There's so much speculation out there. No one knows. But the one thing we know is that there will be challenging times. People are resilient. People will come up with innovative ways of actually dealing with it, right? Yeah.
Right. So the 2 points I wanted to touch on that you raised, and one, I think we both share the idea that to a large extent, so the trends that we observe right now, they were in existence before the pandemic, and to some extent, the pandemic has served as a catalyst, and it has accelerated pre-existing trends. Now, one of those trends has been changing demographics within Southeast Asia, starting from Hong Kong. I mean, before this happened, expats were leaving. Before the trade war, expats were leaving. Before the protests, expats were leaving. Even Shanghai, so we can start further north, Shanghai, and go all the way down to Jakarta. and everyone in between, including KL, including Singapore, the number of expats, or the mix or the ratio between expats and Asians was shifting.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, yes, so 140,000 jobs potentially, and their families would leave, but in a few months' time, they'll be replaced. So chances are they'll be replaced by Asians, so from neighboring Asian countries, or as opposed to someone else coming in from the West. What do you see as the implications of that? It's shifting demographics, particularly within the main centers of Singapore and Hong Kong, becoming less global and more Asian.
Look, that's a very good question. And any which way I answer it, it will perhaps be politically incorrect, right? Because but look, if I just look at Singapore, and Lee Kuan Yew right at the outset had said, look, for Singapore to get to the world stage, for Singapore to be in an environment where it's actually able to hand on heart stand on the same platform as the world leading sort of economies, we need expertise from overseas. It's not, they didn't necessarily say from the West, but we need expertise. Right? And it so happened that the West actually contributed a lot by way of actually bringing in the expertise. Right? And you see that a lot in Singapore or in Hong Kong, in some of these other emerging markets in Asia as well. Now that need hasn't changed. Right? I don't think that's changed. So, expats who've been here, 5-10 years, who've been through this pandemic, who've been through this downturn, who might go, okay, well, I think we've had enough. They'll go. In 6 months' time, 8 months' time, there will be a vacuum created. To your point, will this be filled by more Asians within the region? I think there might be a desire to do that, but is there a matching skill set? And again, this is why I said it might sound a bit politically incorrect. I don't think there is a match of skill sets right now, and I don't for a second say I'm saying that in Asia we don't have those skills. I just think as soon as someone says I don't need any other expertise to come through from any other country, whether it's West or Asia or Africa, it doesn't really matter. Once you say that, then I think you're shooting yourself in the foot. Right? The only way you learn is from other people. You only learn from people that have been there, done that, have experienced multiple environments, right? And in order to do that, you almost have to sort of step back and say, look, we need expertise. And once you accept that, then you embrace. Unfortunately, at the moment in this world, the world of globalization is changing. Protectionism has come in. I'm not even going to go why that's happened, because that could be another 3 hours. And that's not only in the States. Unfortunately, it might have started in the States, and those sentiment might have been there for a long time, and someone came along and triggered it. But it's now everywhere. In Singapore it's there, in Hong Kong it's there, I'm sure sort of other countries as well. But I think it's a wrong direction. I think we're taking a wrong direction. Going back to what I was saying, in order to learn, in order to actually be better, in order to grow as professionals, as individuals, as families, as an economy, as a country, I think we need to embrace people from different countries to come in and contribute to your growth. Right? I think we're moving to an environment where we're sort of going, oh, the expats have come into Asia, they've come out and for whatever reason, they've exploited our economy, exploited, the system, so they should go back. And you replace it with, the sane people, internal people, there's no diversity. and the only way to go from there is sideways and not upright, is my view. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Absolutely, it does. Yeah.
it might. There might be a situation where we're moving to an environment where for the next 3 years, perhaps, there won't be Western expats in Asia. There might be sort of Asians coming in. And, sooner rather than later, people might realize, hang on, this is not what we need. And they might go, okay, well, let's open it up a little bit more. And let's be very open-minded about, the skill sets that we need, irrespective of where they come from.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. Shifting away from Singapore, Southeast Asia, let's go home now. Let's talk about Australia. Because I've been seeing some commentary and debate over I wouldn't say a spat, but some tension in the relationship between Australia and China. And the students, Chinese students, being encouraged not to attend Australian universities, and the extent to which the Australian economy may be dependent on the relationship with China. What do you see happening there? Is it that Australia would find a way to perhaps balance its allegiance to the West, to the UK, US, with its economic relationship with China, or would they tilt one way or the other?
Look, that's a good question. So right at the outset, so if we step back and think about the first time when China came out and said, when Australia said, let's do an independent inquiry about the source of the pandemic, and China said, hang on, we'll impose an 80% tax on barley from now onwards. Right? The first time that happened, there was mixed reaction in Australia. There were two schools. One clearly who was saying, no, we'll be all right. Don't worry about it. We don't need China, and stuff them. How could they bully us? And let's look for something else. And then there's this another school of people who were saying, no, we actually need China. Let's be diplomatic about this. Let's try and sort of two neighbors that's in dispute at the moment. Let's step back and talk. Let's bring in some arbitration, and we'll be okay. So what's happened now? So not only the 80%, China sort of thought, okay, we're winning because we've got some big supporters in Australia, not realizing the culture of Australia. Right? So they've gone, let's push a little bit more. Let's go out and say, the students should not go to Australian universities because it's a racist country. And not only that, they started a lot more than that, right? Banning tourists, basically telling tourists not to visit Australia. Not that in this pandemic climate anyone could anyway. What's ended up happening though in Australia is Australians have come together and said, stuff you, right? Every one of them, even the school that they were saying, no, hang on, let's be diplomatic about it, let's step back and let's talk. Even they are now saying, hang on, enough is enough. You cannot bully us, right? So I think what's happened is China just forgot to draw a line. They thought they could actually just continue with this and bully Australia. So going back to your question, Australia is a very resilient country. Australians are very smart people, and there might be some short-term impact on the economy, on tourism, and on education, and its exports as well. But they will find a way. There will be a way. They will find a way, which is a shame. I really think it's a shame, but they will find a way. What invariably will happen, in my view, despite China's strength and power, I think China will realize that they probably took it too far, and lo and behold, the quarrel, the lovers' quarrel, will be resolved within a year, 2 years, right? But for now, I think Australia's turned around and said, look, that's fine. You do what you want to do.
Okay, that's a fair point. Now, I was going to ask you, as I tend to ask everyone, like what sectors look attractive as we go forward, but then everyone talks about technology, biotech, the usual stuff. So what I'll do is I'll ask you about geography. What geographies to you seem interesting in terms of potential, looking as a potential investor to allocate some capital, or maybe even to move there to exploit or to look for opportunities? What geographies are attractive to you right now?
Yep. Yeah, look, we multi-asset and multi-geography, right? So we effectively look at everywhere, and I know this is not the answer you want, but US is obviously always, is a place you want to stay invested in. So we continue overweight in the US right now. We do feel that there is going to be a recovery, albeit a narrow U recovery, with dips along the way. So that will happen. I think China still, it's still so powerful and strong, and it will continue to evolve and continue to be quite powerful. So we look at China, we look at the US, Europe. It's got its own share of challenges. It's had its challenges for a long time now. But something like a pandemic, for example, will end up bringing it together. The stimulus packages that they've come up with, it's impressive. They have coming together as a region. So we're looking at Europe as well. Fixed income, high yield fixed income, again, sort of sectors. So it doesn't really matter which country, but Asian fixed income is something that we've looked at as well. India, you can't ignore India. It's still sort of growing. So the usual suspects, right? There's nothing out there where we sort of say, well, this is a hidden gem, for example. It's boring. Okay. It's boring, the usual. But again, private wealth management, investments, and everything else was never meant to be exciting. It's always meant to be a boring old thing, right?
Okay. Well, then I'll go back to my previous point, sectors. Any hidden gems in terms of sectors?
Look, we are medium long-term players. We don't sort of look at the tip of the day environment. So maybe after 3 beers, I might actually give you a few of those tips. But right now, we are very much focused on sort of wealth protection. We're focused on sort of steady growth without taking undue risks. We don't move into sophisticated, complex, structured products that no one understands. Even the people that are selling them. We tend to be just boring at looking after other people's money, right, and doing it well without taking unnecessary risks.
Okay.
So the whole idea for us is diversification. From sector, from assets, geography, and medium long term, right? And not chopping and changing, not being reactive, not going out and sort of panicking and selling and buying on market movements, right?
Okay. All right. So that's it. I think we've explored everything except one thing: politics.
Sorry?
Politics.
I thought that's what we were talking about.
The U.S. politics. I know you've been keeping an eye on it. Any predictions?
Look, you read my weekly blogs, right? And it is a blog. It's got nothing to do with investments. What I do is there's so many people out there writing about the economy and the market and the sectors, and we do that as well. Our CIO audio that I attach to my the weekly macro report that talks about the market and what's happened and what we think might happen. But then my blog is always about nothing about the investments environment. My blog is about life, right? And I say that right now because Trump has been the source of my inspiration. For my weekly in a humorous way, not in a way where it leads me to wake up in the morning and go, yes, I'm so looking forward to the day, right? It's more from a perspective of humor. Look, US, I think Trump's had his goal. Biden is going to come in, I think. Is it the best for the market? I'm not sure. I don't think. Is it best for the country? Definitely.
Okay, so Biden is. So we'll touch
Yeah,
base
you know,
in
and
November.
Trump has come out and done things, said things that no one would even dare think
Yeah.
of doing at all, right? There might be a fleeting thought, and you'd go, nah, no way, I can't even raise it, right? He's just come in and completely gone, well, okay, well, there you go, you can say it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll give him that. You know, he's given everyone strength to actually go out and say what they think.
Mhm.
Is it a good thing? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. That politics.
So now, hang on, tell me what about you? What's your thoughts?
Gosh, to me, it really hinges around voter turnout because if you look at voting patterns demographically, it's in favor of the Democrats. I think the four pillars of the Democratic Party are what: young people, women, and ethnic minorities, and they tend and the problem with ethnic minorities, in particular African Americans, voter turnout was pretty much on the lower side because the polls were predicting that she would have come out on top. So people were like, why bother? So I think it's about voter turnout, and that's gonna carry the day. So as to whether the machinery behind the Democratic Party can make that happen, I don't know. I'm not getting the impression that Biden is injecting energy into the voting public, that they feel motivated to come out and support him, but rather it may be those who do not support President Trump. So they would, so anything can happen, and polls were
I think
wrong.
to your point, anything can happen. I think so. My sense is there are lots of closet Trump supporters.
Yeah.
And when I say closet Trump supporters, they actually out in the open. They're embarrassed to say they actually support Trump.
Yeah.
Because of all the things that Trump does or doesn't do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if there is a substantial, significant voter turnout, what people do, right at the last sort of minute with the voting, who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
coming back to this protectionism, right? I think, in one of my blogs, I had mentioned this as well. That what's led to this environment, right? It's globalization, and this fear that people from overseas have come into my country and have taken my jobs.
Yes.
And it's that, right? Without stepping back and thinking the people that have come over, how have they helped the economy? Right? Would we be in this environment had it not been for them? And if the answer is yes, then maybe you're right. Maybe protect and say we don't need people from overseas. But if the answer is no, we would not be in this environment had it not been for migrants coming in, then you don't need protectionism. Then you need to embrace, and that's the basic thing that people are missing right now, I think.
Yeah, there does seem to be, and to borrow a term from Marx, a dialectical relationship between the two positions, where yes, there's momentum towards globalization. I mean, we are closer together. We know each other. There's more cross-cultural interaction than within recent history. But at the same time, there are those who feel as if this globalization has left them behind, and it's created a country or city that they no longer feel comfortable with. They feel out of place. They feel as if they've been displaced if you come from a certain demographic. So and that results in a pushback. So when I was younger, the polemics were left versus right. Now it seems to be globalization versus nationalism. My concern, though, is the last time we pushed towards nationalism and we created big trade barriers, barriers to trade, that was in the run-up to the Second World War. That didn't work out so well. And as a result of that, we had the Washington Consensus, we had the Bretton Woods Agreement, we had the United Nations, we had the EEA, which became the EU. It was all about working together because we recognized when we tried to go it alone, things go wrong.
Yeah.
And to create checks and balances in terms of the balance of powers, particularly within Europe and within Asia, given what happened last time. And now that we, to some extent, those decision makers have forgot the lessons of the past, or they're playing populist politics, and the institutions that were designed to protect us, like the WTO, like every institution seems to be challenged right now. Every multilateral institution, most recently the WHO, they all seem to be facing their own share of challenges, and they're no longer fit for purpose. And the underlying ideal, or the idea that brought them into life, i.e., to keep us working together and to stop us from fighting, that's my concern. But we'll see what happens. We try to.
You make a very, very good point.
Yeah.
Look, I think I was always against, people, countries used to say, we are a racially tolerant society, right? And I say that's such a wrong thing to say. Yeah. It's such a wrong thing to say. It's like saying, I tolerate you. Mm-hmm. It should be racially embracing. And I hope people will sort of start looking at that and going, okay, well, we embrace differences, right? Mm-hmm. Not tolerate. And that's where I think the fundamental issue is. Mm. But who knows, right, where we headed. We're becoming more and more global and more connected, yet we trying to become less separated and less individual as possible, which doesn't work in this climate that we've set ourselves. Right?
Mm. And if it's one thing, we are living in very interesting times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rohit, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Sharing your insights.
You're welcome.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Right. See you later on. Bye-bye.